You're listening to a Thames Estuary Partnership podcast, celebrating London's famous tidal river. We hope you enjoy it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Talk of the Thames. I'm your host, Chloe Russell, and you're listening to a podcast made by the Thames Estuary Partnership, where we learn all things London River Thames. So how are we all doing on this warm Easter weekend? Have you got any fun plans, or maybe you're recovering from too many fun plans? Well, I'm very excited to share today's episode with you all. I spoke with Jesse Seaward and Ollie Jackson about their project Fish Local, specifically their project within Fish Local, where they chose a local fish species to rebrand and why they decided to start the project. It's quite an interesting insight into the project where we learn about the whole process of decision making, including the sustainability and longevity of the chosen species, down to why they chose the new name. But I won't give it all away in this introduction, so without further ado, here's Jesse and Ollie. Hello and welcome to Talk of the Thames, Jesse and Ollie. How are you both?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, same. Great, thanks.
Thank you so much for chatting with me today. I understand that it's a very busy period for you both as your Fish Local project has come to an end, and we're looking forward to hearing all about it. But before we get stuck in about the project, can you both tell me a little bit about yourselves and what you do at Fish Local? I say, Jesse, take it away.
Yeah. So my day job is running a marketing and branding business. We got involved with Fish Local through the local inshore fisheries and conservation authority a couple of years ago. Came in as a sort of a COVID response project, and then we slowly sort of started to take ownership of the project and the strategy side of it, which led us to collaborate with Thames Estuary Partnership. And so my role has now evolved into sort of co-leading the project with TEP.
Excellent. How about you, Ollie?
So I come from a family of ex-fishermen. Both my dad, my granddad, and my uncles were all fishermen out of Ramsgate. And in addition to my work with Fish Local, I still work down the Ramsgate Marina quite a bit. So I've always been kind of in and amongst the sea. And this kind of came about. My dad is also the FLO on multiple projects across the Thames Estuary, and I think he first worked with Jesse on Fish Local at its beginning, and then he introduced Jesse and myself, and then I came on as the fishery liaison for Fish Local, so I kind of bridged the gap with the project and the industry.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's fantastic. What a range of skills and interests you both share. So tell us, what is Fish Local and what's the project you have both been working on recently?
Well, this project has been quite an interesting one because it started off as a sort of questionnaire to the industry to see if we should keep the Fish Local project going. You know, its usefulness as a tool post-COVID and Brexit had sort of come to a bit of an end. But what we'd managed to do, we'd managed to pick up quite a lot of traction politically, and the project as a whole, as a concept, had got quite a lot of notoriety. So we kind of went to the local industry in Kent and Essex and asked them if they kind of wanted us to develop something to use this Fish Local brand with, rather than just sort of letting it go and let the social media run, to see if they wanted us to start to evolve some new projects. And they came back sort of quite strongly asking us to look at local marketing for the species that we have here. I think it's very specifically in Kent and Essex and sort of around the Thames Estuary, the sort of one size fits all marketing that you get from DEFRA level doesn't really suit any of the species we have here. We don't have species that are useful for fish and chips. We don't have, we might say they do an oily fish. Yeah, we do get quite a bit of mackerel, but it's pretty unhelpful, or felt to be unhelpful generally. So they came back to us and said, well, look, we'd really like something that really truly fits our local species. And we'd been looking at some other projects around the country, like the Cornish sole, obviously down in Cornwall, and what they'd done with sardines, looking at what they're good at locally and giving it a bit more of a local presence. And we put that idea back to the industry, and they really loved it. So that's what we decided to do with the project. We'd look at all the local species, about 50 odd.
Yeah, I think it was like 52 species we looked at first.
Yeah, 52 species, and then work out with a small group which ones were actually viable. So obviously Dover sole, mackerel, they've already got a market. You're not really going to do very much with them. And then there are some that biologically you don't get much yield or you can't fish, and there's a whole host of other reasons. And we kind of whittled it down to 5. And then took those 5 species then forward into the main project, which was to highlight a species that was local. It had possibility to be managed into a sustainable fishery, and that the fishermen could catch without buying lots of new equipment. It was, sort of fairly easy species to go out for, and one that they actually wanted to catch and that people would want to eat. And so that was where the project started.
And the 5 species that we picked as well, that we whittled it down to, were the smoothhound, the whiting, the heron, thornback ray, mullet. Was there another one, Jess?
No. Yeah, that was 5, wasn't it?
I always forget. Yeah.
No, but the thing with, we really wanted the project to be industry up. So many projects are done off the industry. I think fishermen or fishers feel that projects are done to them, not for them. And they, so for instance, they might get given some kit, but that doesn't actually really help. It saves them having to buy that bit of kit, but actually it doesn't really help what's going on. And so it certainly doesn't help address some of the sort of fundamental issues within the local industry. So we sort of created this working group, which is a sort of industry-led working group. So we had Marine Conservation Society on there, Seafish, one of the main local distributors called Chapman's. Then we had Shepherd's Neame, one of their main chefs, their main development chef. Obviously, Amy from Thames Estuary Partnership. Then we had Will Wright from the IFCA. So we had a really good, and myself. Oh, of course, actually, crucially, 2 fishermen from Essex and fishers from Kent as well. But then once that group had made a decision, we then fed that decision back into the wider working group, which is loads of industry, consumer groups, market research. So we really wanted to make sure that anything that we were doing within the project was being cross-checked and validated by not just by experts who are obviously coming up with really good options, but that those options were being supported at each step by the industry. And I think the outcome of the project, which we can come on to in a bit, has been so interesting, and it's sort of leading into an even more interesting sort of future project. But it's been nice that we've been able to be reassured that what we're doing is still wanted, at each stage, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that rounder. That's really useful. So you chose the herring in the end. Was it a difficult decision?
Well, at first we thought it was going to be smoothhound.
Yeah.
Out of the 5 fish, a few of them kind of had to be taken out of the running early on due to management issues. But there was one point where Jesse and myself were team smoothhound. That's the one we thought it was going to be. It was it was an easier fish to cook, really. But then, as we did our due diligence and looked further into it and looked at the smoothhound, we started to realise that due to management issues, they're slow breeders, and because not enough is known about the species, they couldn't enforce accurate management for the quota. So there wasn't anything that we could do in a quick enough time frame that could have an impact on the fishery. So it kind of started to put it on the back line, and then all of a sudden Team Heron came along, which now me and Jesse are.
Yeah, I think the thing to mention alongside all of that is that those 5 species got whittled down pretty quickly. We were expecting to be doing these lovely events. I mean, obviously COVID got in the way a little bit, but doing these great events with all 5 different fish and people tasting them and telling us what they like. But the reality is when you start to look into each species, and this is why these projects are really important, is that they're being discounted for really simple reasons really quickly. Maybe it's to do with unsuitable international management that is not possible to review. You can't really, something like, I think it was the whiting, wasn't it? Really difficult to store, so logistically difficult for the fishes to catch.
Yeah, and once it's been filleted, there really isn't a lot there, so it kind of they didn't have a high yield.
Yeah, and then grey mullet, which nobody grey mullet apparently is initially. One of the fishers said, "Oh yeah, it's a poor man's bass," and I was like, "Oh, that's amazing! That how great would that be? Poor man's bass. I can see it already. Pub menus across the land.
Yeah, it was quite good."
And then the next person goes, "Yeah, but it tastes of sand," and it's like, so that's why it's a poor man's bass, because it actually doesn't taste very good. So to actually try and come up with a species that sort of really fits all of our hitting points. It was really difficult. But then herring, like Ollie was saying, it just came along and totally saved the day. It turns out that it has potential to be fished really sustainably. It already has really decent management, but DEFRA are really keen to make some changes, and that conversation had already started. And those changes are Kent and Essex wide. So again, that really fits well with what we've been trying to do. It's the healthiest fish. It was, it's the healthiest fish on the list.
Yeah.
When we started to look at it, it looks really versatile. And then we did this fantastic project with Dover Christchurch Academy, where we gave them they have like a catering department, and we gave them a brief to make something for fish and chips. And they come up with these little, I suppose if you're in a fancy restaurant, you'd call them bonbons, but these little, these sort of fish cake balls, which were really completely delicious. And we served them to a bunch of kids, and the kids really loved them. And it sort of, from the moment that we went, oh, do you know what? It's going to be herring. And we were really negative. It's like, oh, I can't believe this. It's going to be herring. Like, nobody likes roll mops. I mean, maybe a few people are going to eat some kippers. But like,
older generation.
Yeah. Like we've just, we've taken an aging fleet and given them an aging product to an aging market. And it's like, oh my, this is a disaster. But actually, it's turned out to be completely brilliant. Everything we've done, we did a series of market research across, I won't go too much into details, but it's like properly weighted demographics across Kent and Essex. And it was a resounding yes to herring. Like, you wouldn't believe 22% of people, and this was across 1,000 respondents, right, in the area, 22% consistently in all different markets said they liked herring, which is amazing. And then 80% of those people said that if it was a local herring, that they would be even more interested in it.
Wow.
So it was a total, all of a sudden we were sitting, and this is part of what's been exciting about rounding the whole thing up, is that actually there's an open door for us to push out now. It does look like, actually, I think only like 3% of people said that their opinion towards herring was, I can't remember the words we use now, but was, really bad. Which was an amazing number. We just thought it was going to really polarize people. But actually it didn't at all. And quite a few people on the list of when we asked people what fish they were currently eating, not only did they put herring in, but they also then in other species named kippers.
Okay.
So, which is quite interesting because I do wonder how many people realise that kippers are herrings.
Yeah, I think quite a lot of people think they're two separate things.
Yeah, exactly. So in reality, even though herring was literally the last fish standing, it's been a total win. And from that moment where it became herring, it has been really, really well received. So then after that, which has been the win of all wins, I guess, is that the blackwater fishery for herring, which is the slightly different species, in the international papers, that species is recognised as Thames variant herring, which is the one that we were looking at. So that is currently caught under blackwater management up only in Essex. But we've been looking at the fact that those same fish actually are the same ones being caught all through the district. But actually, the fish that we get spawn at a different time of year to the North Sea herring, which means those herring that we get in Kent and Essex, and crucially in the Thames estuary, is a different subspecies of spring spawning herring, which we will be able to say, hopefully, are our named herrings as a local speciality. So we will have an outcome for the Kent and Essex fishers that is completely unique to them. And that was our gilt edge desire from the project, which is to try and do something that was special to the area. And we just didn't think that there would be such a viable opportunity. But we're wrapping this project up. That is the opportunity that we're currently faced with.
You mentioned that there were health benefits of the herring. Can you tell us what some of those are?
They're full of omega-3 rich fatty acids, very oily fish. Obviously, everyone loves a bit of omega-3 with your fish, in your fish.
Any other health benefits on there?
Well, I think certainly the way that you would cook it, generally, you might pickle it. It's good for sushi. It's really nice just grilled. So actually, it's not a fish that you'd necessarily be inclined to cook in an unhealthy way either.
You can also cook it in its own fat, in its own oil. So you don't actually need to add oil to the pan, really. So that's also another good thing. I mean, it's very versatile. It's a very versatile fish. Especially when we started looking into it, I didn't actually realise how versatile it was and what you could do with it. Like Jesse was saying, when we went to the school, the ideas that they were coming up with and the recipes they were finding, it was all kind of news to me. But it was all very impressive. Yeah. Wasn't it, Jess? Yeah. Like, it was very good.
You mentioned sushi. I had no idea you could put herring on sushi.
Yeah, actually, it's really popular. And funnily enough, I went to a restaurant on Wednesday for a business lunch, and there was pickled herring on the starters menu.
Did you get it?
I didn't because I didn't have a starter, but I'm going there again on Wednesday.
Let the team down.
Yeah, well, no, I didn't see it until after I'd already had my main course. Otherwise, I definitely would have had it. But no, I very specifically booked the same restaurant. It happens to be right by office as well, so that's really handy. But yeah, well, I booked the same restaurant in Soho for Wednesday, and I'm definitely going to have the herring. Yeah. And I'm gonna chew off the ear of the chef about using our brilliant come September when our herring starts to appear in Kent and Essex. I'm going to make sure they put our herring on the menu.
That's brilliant.
It must be done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I've been going there for about 20 years, this place, so I think...
Oh, it must be a good restaurant. Can we get a cheeky name drop? What's the restaurant?
Oh, it's called The Union. It's the Union Club on Greek Street in Soho.
Ooh.
It's really good.
Yeah, I'm going to have to keep an eye out for that one.
Yeah.
So tell me, what do you hope will come from this project for the fishing industry in the future?
Well, I think the really crucial thing that we've been trying to do all through this project is reach out into the community to get them to connect with the fishing industry. Ollie'd probably be better to talk about it, but the headline is that it's the inshore fishery in Kent and Essex is a seriously ageing fleet. There just aren't kids coming through, and that's for all kinds of reasons. Like generally, the fishers are going on their own, so they don't have someone they're employing. They don't have someone who's out there who are learning the trade. You know, it doesn't. On the face of it, it's not looking that exciting to their kids, and we're actually in a fairly serious chance of there not really being
a fishing fleet.
Any fishing fleet. I mean, there might be one or two sort of slightly bigger operations. Maybe they've got a. I think there's one based out of Broadstairs. They've got a shop and a boat, and they sort of supply commercially as much as they do to the general public. And I think we'll maybe see those guys. But in terms of there being this really fantastic historical artisan industry that we're so lucky to have at the minute, it's not that many years and it could just completely not be there. So we've tried to bake in projects with all different age groups, with throughout education and, university students right through to primary schools, so that we can sort of highlight just how brilliant the produce is that we get in the Thames Estuary. World-class cockles and lobsters, and it's not just the fin fish that we're working with. It's some of the best seafood in the world, and we kind of really need to hold on to that. It's and I'm definitely not going to get political, but the fishing industry is weaponized by the government, even though doesn't really have that much value. But the value to our communities, and this again, why Thames Estuary Partnership is so important to help develop these projects, because it really does need to be reconnected back with the community. And that's what we really hope to achieve. Yeah, we want to make a fantastic local speciality, and we're making every step to make that really successful. What we really want to see is some genuine growth within the industry. That's the real, and that shouldn't necessarily be my goal as a marketing agency. Shouldn't really be my job. But I think the reality is that we do need to take the bull by the horns a little bit, and do some work, and sort of. I don't think the fishing industry has the ability that maybe we do and TEP do, to take a step back and go, right, okay, well, look, what can we plug in to this industry to give it some growth in the background, because the fishers can't. They're working every hour God sends, just doing their day job.
That's really well said.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say pretty much the same thing. Like, hopefully the project can create enough interest that the fishermen can go there and catch the herring if they want to, because it gives them something else to catch for. Because say there was a pool of 20 fish they can go and catch, it's constantly being squashed, with quota and the fish not being here, so there's no cod here anymore. So if we can give them another fish that is got some local demand from the public, then we're giving them something else that they can go and earn money from. And hopefully this can create, hopefully the project can create some excitement among the youth, because there's no youth coming into the industry, and you don't want that knowledge to disappear, because those fishermen have got so much knowledge. They are the masters of that trade. And, once they retire, because, kind of they're all around 55, and you've got a few younger ones at 40, but once they retire, that you're not going to be able to pick that skill up, easily. It will take you a long time. So you kind of need to improve the fishery and the price that they can fetch. And then they can maybe take people on board, and then they can pass that skill on as well. I think that's something that's really important, that kind of hopefully this can be a building block to go forward into the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's one of the lovely things with herring, and we've been lucky enough to have someone like Ollie's dad who fished for herring for years, so we really get us excited about the processes behind it. But it is a real artisan skill, and he was saying that already, because obviously word gets out a little bit about what you're doing, and already one or two fishers have kind of asked him, "Oh, so how do we go and fish for herring? What's the deal?" And that's what we really want to try and create, is a little bit of interest behind totally adding another fish to their roster. Because what did you say, Ollie? There's only about 5 or 6 different species that they can properly monetize in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many it is exactly, but I was just kind of going off like rough. If you had, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, there was more fish here anyway, and there was more that you could catch, and trends change, fish were worth different money back then. Different fish are popular now than they were back then. But I think if we can add another fish to that, and especially a winter fishery, because the season for a herring is September around to December, you will still get them in like January and Feb. But the fish you're kind of catching in summer, so kind of like the smooth ham, will go away around August time, maybe a little bit later than that. And then in comes the herring, so it kind of gives them a winter fishery as well. So it's like another string to the bow,
Yeah, I think as well, there will be fishers that will turn around and go, "Well, I don't care about herring. I don't want to catch herring." But then it's taken some of the pressure off the fish stocks that they do want to fish for.
Yeah.
So maybe there'll be one less boat going out for Dover sole, or be one less boat going out for mackerel.
Yeah, and it also then that releases the pressure on those fisheries as well, which then kind of hand in hand has a bit more of a sustainable approach to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that there's a word that keeps getting bandied around, and it's generally for the people for the MMO when you're putting your projects, putting your things together, but it's legacy. But there's a real sense of reality to that word for us, which is that if you the idea of creating a sustainable fishery will mean that can really last. And the truth is, with the smoothhound, there is no quota for smoothhound. We could have gone, let's go for smoothhound. It's great for fish and chips, but ultimately, the fact that it's slow
breeding.
So, thank you, Ollie. The fact that it's slow breeding, it could so easily have been fished out before we'd had any chance to do anything with it. And because from a management point of view, even though smoothhounds are abundant, they're also lumped in with all of the other types of dogs. So you can't necessarily, that would have been a whole other long-term project in itself to re-establish huge amounts of management. And this was what was great about having the Marine Conservation Society baked into the project, is that, saying, well, actually you could do all of that work. You could do all of that stock assessments. You could spend 2-3 years working out the viability of it, and the viability just isn't there. Whereas with herring, it doesn't have the greatest rating at the moment, but that's down to a lack of catch data because there's been no market for it. And we've been talking to the likes of CFAS, who agree that it's because of a lack of market that there's been no catch data. So actually, there's an open door for us to make some quick change with a fishery that's managed locally. It's its own species, so we're not talking about management for all herring. We're talking about management for a very specific type of herring that we can segregate off. And this is part of the next steps of the project, is actually putting together a research project to show that this herring, this spring spawning herring, is across the whole of the Thames Estuary, and not just up in the Blackwater region of Essex. And that then truly opens up a whole new bespoke fishery for Kent and Essex. And then, like I said, if we do show with CFAS that it's its own species and that it's only in Kent and Essex, well, then we've got our local speciality. We can use vessel tracking, we can use social media to give a really good trail of custody to a local fish. And, and our research says if we can show people that it's local, they'll buy it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say, yeah.
And that's really exciting.
It makes so much sense to have chosen the herring, really.
It does now.
Yeah, it does now.
It does now. But that's the beauty of the project, right? Is that honestly, when we put the 5 species on, and I've got my marketing hat on, and at this point I don't know lots about each one, and I'm going, please don't pick herring. Please don't pick herring. I mean, what the hell am I going to do with herring? But you get through to the end of it, and you go, well, we could have our own Melton Mowbray here. This could be like champagne. It has to come from this region to call it the. Obviously we've come up with a name, which is a big part of the project, is to be able to reinvigorate and reinvent this species for Kent and Essex industry. And honestly, it was just an unbelievable outcome, ultimately, that I thought initially at the beginning, I thought would have been a total disaster. So but then that's what these projects are all about, isn't it? It's about
exploring.
You learn a lot as well.
Yeah. And I think it's really worth saying that we were so lucky with the quality and the level of expert that came onto our working group. So the buy-in from them and to give their time and their expertise is what has brought us to this outcome. Distribution, hospitality, the MCS, the IFCA, from the for all of those areas combined to work out, okay, look, if we please all of these people, then we're going to have a really, really good fish to take forward. And that is exactly what has happened. hopefully they'll all listen, and they'll hear me giving them a big thank. They'll hear me giving them such a big thank you. But yeah, it's been absolutely mission critical.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been brilliant.
I would love to talk about the new name, the Silver Shore Herring. Can you tell us why you decided on the name? And I love it. It paints a picture in my head of the waves breaking on the shore. That's what I think about when I hear that name.
Yeah, so I think we went through a really robust process. I mean, the funny finding what fish we're going to take has been a research exercise more so than a marketing project, but much to its credit. But then, obviously, with the naming side, that's where our sort of marketing expertise can kind of take over, and we can apply our sort of more normal practices to it. And ultimately, the choice of name came down to the working group and the sort of wider industry groups liking it. And actually, we had a really nice moment. Ollie and I went into a primary school about a week ago to do a little kick-off one of our little education project that we're hoping to do across some primary schools in Essex.
That's great.
And I made this sort of document because what we wanted them to do is to make a collage of a fish to represent the school and then name it using the same sort of system that we had. So I'd made up this. I sort of broke this down how you do it, and then I put up our top 5 names that our short list. And one of the girls put her hands up and she said, "I'd pick Silver Shore." I go, "Why would you pick Silver Shore?" She says, "I just think it's really lovely." And I think, and then we asked around the group, and loads of them agreed.
Yeah.
With it, and I think so. That's just so nice to have just some sort of heartfelt. It's just nice.
Yeah.
So there was a large element of that, I think, to the group who were choosing it, but. What we really liked with this particular name was that it really hinted towards this idea of the silver darlings and what that had done for the economy in Scotland, and that they'd sort of really had become this sort of really worthwhile fishery. And so we really like the idea of including that. But the big thing that we kind of wanted to do was to give a nod to the inshore industry, and the idea that you would always be in view of the shore when you were catching it was really nice as well. And there wasn't really another name that, as nice as they were and as good as all of the reasoning and we had historians working on it, and we really did look far and wide. But there was nothing really that did both things. There's nothing really that talked about the fish and how it was caught in such a nice way. And I'm with you, Chloe. I really like the idea of the visual side of the silveriness of the fish. And I think I like the idea that actually you can see the shore from the boat, but if you're looking from the shore, you can see the silver of the shimmering herring from it as well. So it has a really sort of artisan and soft appeal to it as well. So I think it's just a really appealing name.
Yeah, I mean, it was my favourite. It was my favourite from the get-go. I think when we went and met Andrew, what was it? There was 15 names.
Yeah.
And it was hard. There was a lot of good ones, but Silver Shore stuck out to me because it was descriptive enough, but it didn't leave you asking questions like, why this name? So some of them were something that happened in history.
Right.
So then you would constantly be kind of explaining the story behind the name, whereas Silver Shore says what it is on the tin,
Yeah, they're silvery and you can see the shore when you're catching them. I mean, it is if you really want to break it down, you can make it make it really simple. Yeah.
So it ticks all the boxes.
Yeah, I think so. And I think one of the other things that has come out of this project, which is a bit it's not really fish related at all, but we, when it comes to looking at, we started off doing it for Kent and Essex because that was the geographical, that's the IFCA, that's because the project started off working with the IFCA, that's their area, so it's Kent and Essex. But then as it just become more about the local industry, but we're still working across Kent and Essex, obviously there are two very different attitudes on each side of the Thames. And it's quite often seen as, and both those attitudes are great, but they're different nonetheless. And I think the Thames has often been seen as a bit of a divide between the two. And I think with this project, we've seen an opportunity and this is something we want to take forward with the next steps, is to actually show that the Thames can be an adjoining feature as well as a geographical divide. Getting this, we can show that from a communications point of view by working to get this management across the whole of the district. So we're physically connecting it. But I think when we talk about the project, we want to start to talk about the fact that the Thames actually connects these two districts and doesn't actually divide them. And the idea of Silver Shore as the whole shore of the Thames estuary, I think fits very well with that. And we definitely will be looking at how we can take that forward into other bits of the project.
That's really exciting. So when you mentioned September, will we ever be expecting a Silver Shore herring label in our local supermarkets? What's the plan?
I don't think we will this September, because we can't start any research on this with CFAS and biological research until the fish come back.
Okay.
So the season, Ollie, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's very late August.
Yeah, September.
So basically September.
Yeah.
So we can't actually catch any or test any until then. So yes, what we're saying is that all fish caught in the Thames estuary, are Silver Shore herring because of that reason. It's the fish that the herring that you fish when you're in view of the Silver Shore. So that's the principle. So yes, I think hopefully we'll start to see Silver Shore appearing in places, maybe in our fish and chip shops, maybe in our restaurants. But I think in terms of actually labelling it up as a product, we've got to do a little bit more work. We really want to get DEFRA to recognise Silver Shore as a separate species and therefore to sit separately on the Good Fish Guide. And I think we just got a little bit more work technically to do before we can really, really cement that in place. But
that's exciting.
But that's the dream outcome, to get it really put out on its own as a local Kent and Essex speciality, or Thames estuary speciality. I think
that'd be so special.
Yeah, that really would be something to put in the family album, as it were.
Yeah.
So yeah, very exciting.
One for the books.
Yeah.
I noticed that Fish Local has been getting some traction from the likes of ITV and BBC. That must have felt like a real accomplishment.
Yeah, it's over the cycle of the Fish Local brand. It's been mentioned in Parliament. It's been, I think, in the first part of the project, we got something like 76 hours of TV and radio traction.
That's cool.
And I think this time it's been picked up just as. There've been loads of articles about it. It's had, like I say, when we've had some big opportunities, like going into Dover Christchurch and them cooking up these fantastic mini sort of herring fish cakes, having ITV come down and interview the kids to show them eating it, to show how much they enjoyed it. Those kids put their heart and soul into that project, didn't they, Ollie?
Yeah,
they were absolutely brilliant.
That's so sweet.
And they deserved every moment. These are kids who want to go off and be chefs, and they're at catering college, but they're also they've also got, they call it Le Hatch, and they feed other students every Wednesday and stuff like that. And they've been putting it on their menu now, and we've been sort of sending them regular boxes of herring.
Yeah, the kids are asking for more. When we did the tasting and the ITV came down, you had some kids asking for more, and I was panicking at first when we first gave them herring to experiment with, because I was thinking, oh god, it's going to be terrible. It's not going to taste good. And then we were blown away. It was really good. Me and Jesse, we were helping ourselves to quite a lot of it.
Oh, nice.
Well, the first day they did, so we went in, they did the project over 2 or 3 weeks, and Ollie and I went in the first day, tell them a bit about the project, and we took a box of herring in with us, and then they just sort of went about learning how to fillet it and cook it and all that sort of stuff. And it was brilliant for us, because they were grilling this herring and they were frying it a bit, and they were trying a little bit of this, trying a little bit of that. It was fantastic. But even the chefs, or the students, who had barely even touched, weren't really squeamish about fish, or they really, because it was a real live project, they really embraced it, I think. And all of them, there was about 2 or 3 of them who'd never eaten fish, who tried it. I mean, I was making them.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's forcing them.
I mean, in a nice way. It's like, come on, you've got to try some fish. Come on, this is amazing. You
won't be on TV if you don't try this.
No,
that was the line.
That's funny.
It's so difficult not to get passionate about this sort of stuff, and I think this has been the real engine behind the project. Is it's such a fascinating industry. It'd be horrendous if it really took a massive hit over the next decade or so, and you can't help but become passionate about it. And when you're faced with somebody who goes, I don't want to try fish, you're like, just try it once. I mean, I'm a dad of young children, so I've kind of got the kids, you've got to try it. That's it down quite well. But but they did eventually. They did try it, and okay, it was mixed reactions. I'm not going to lie, but actually they did, and they did eat it. And then when it was actually in this fish cake ball, they all really liked it.
Nice.
So that was, and I felt like such a win. So to have, for them and for the school who have backed us, and their media studies department are making a documentary in the same project, and we've got them a documentary maker as a mentor who came down and worked with them for a few days. So we had ITV Meridian filming the kids, but also filming the kids who were filming the kids.
Nice.
So it was just brilliant, and the school loved it. They totally backed it and really put their shoulder to the wheel. So to have the ITV local news come down, and they did a really, really nice piece on it. And I can give you guys the link. It's on YouTube. We've put it on YouTube.
Yeah,
they did a really nice piece, and the local BBC Radio Kent came down and did an audio piece, and they did it in the style of like a Master Chef. Come on, you've only got a minute to go.
Oh,
and,
that's cool.
With really sort of music full of suspense, and like, how's it going to go? And then I went on and did a little interview afterwards. So they'd really thought, like, how are we gonna make this idea come across really well on the radio? And that's just been the level of the investment of everybody that's come and done it. And like I say, the piece on Meridian was brilliant. And to see the kids, and we were genuinely there. It wasn't the magic of TV. They actually really did like it, to the point where we were going, oh, blimey, they really liked it. So, isn't it? It's like, I could have sworn there was going to be, I don't like fish. I don't want it. It doesn't look nice. But they didn't they? Everybody loved it.
Yeah. I mean, I was in the kitchen.
Actually, no, not everybody.
Yeah, there were a few, but I would say that the majority liked it, especially the teachers as well. They were well chuffed with it when they tried it. Yeah.
And I think the only real shame is that we couldn't get Simon from Shepherd's Neame, who's been so really, really supportive. And actually, we still might be able to get him to come down and do like a chef's table with the kids, because I mean, I would like to hope that's exactly the sort of thing that they could put on their menus. I mean, obviously he's the boss of that, but
yeah.
But it was that good that you could see it. You could genuinely see it. You could see it in a the sort of basket you get in a restaurant with a few chips on the side, and you could see it wrapped up in your local chippy. I mean, my kids always go for fish cakes pretty much when we have fish and chips, and I think they'd absolutely love these. Sort of little, and because they looked really appetizing. But equally, they didn't look like nuggets or anything like that. Yeah. They weren't just more beige food. They looked kind of fresh and enticing. And again, as a parent, I'd be more than happy to get them those over nuggets or something like highly processed.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But also, you've got the factor that it's locally sourced fish, which would blow nuggets out of the water any day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think, I mean, that's the one thing really we haven't talked very much about is the food. The sort of food miles.
Yeah.
It
all feeds into the sustainability side of this project as well.
Yeah, and I think the sort of fish that you'll find in the supermarket isn't the same as the fish that you'll necessarily find locally. And whilst, for instance, the herring that you'll find in Tesco's, it's MSC accredited, and that's fantastic, but it's Scottish. I don't know what sort of food miles it'll do on the way to Scotland via distribution hubs and this, that, and the other. But there's no doubt that it's not as that if we can get Kent and Essex, the inshore fleet doesn't need a cod. It needs a fishery that is there in enough numbers for the fleet, for that size of fleet, to fish sustainably. So we don't necessarily need it to be the next big five or the sixth big fish. It just has to have a really nice, good quality local market with a set price for the fishers. So when they go out for it, they pretty much know what they're going to get. And I think that's the really key thing for us is gauging that success just right from a marketing point of view. We don't want it to be too expensive, but we do want it to be a bit special. And we want the demand to be enough that if a fisher wants to go out for it, they'll make money from it. Mm-hmm. I think that side of it is really important, because we don't all of a sudden want to be sending this fish all over the world, all over the country. Yeah, bits of it. And we obviously don't want to not sell as many fish as we can. But I do think with herring specifically, there is a real sweet spot to be had with this particular species. That is somewhere in between all of those things. And having, at the very beginning of the project, seeing Greek bass being sold 5 meters away from where local bass was being landed, and that local bass going to Billingsgate and not literally being walked 5 meters over the road, blew my tiny mind. Yeah. I just didn't even really know it was going. I mean, I guess if somebody pushed me to try and say, I would have said, yeah, obviously fish goes up to Billingsgate and this, that, and the other, but just not quite on such a scale that you'd have fishmongers not selling a single local fish.
It's quite shocking.
They're in a harbour.
Yeah.
And that almost falls under trade descriptions for me. And I'm only saying that colloquially because obviously I'm certainly not going to name any names, but it just genuinely blew my mind. And I think you just add in that it is another reason why this sort of project just has got under, and not just got under my skin, but everybody who's been involved. It's really struck a chord, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that. I think it's really important. I think it says it in the name, doesn't it? Fish local.
Yeah.
One thing that really strikes me in this project is the sense of community. And I wanted to touch on the Fish Local website, because as soon as you're on it, you're greeted with these absolutely gem photos. You've got chefs with their seafood recipes. You've got menus with recipes. You've got children holding their fish catch. And it's such a nice sense of that community. And it's those photos are found with the hashtag FishLocalGB, right? Is that sourced from all social media platforms and then it's pushed onto your website? How does it work?
So that's exactly. Yeah. So we've, there are 2 social walls, one on the homepage and one on the What's Fresh page.
Okay.
We're actually about to overhaul the Fish Local website, but it's still going to have very much the same sort of information. It's just going to add this project onto it, and
that's
we're going to sort of add some more. So What's Fresh is going to be more about what fish is in season in the local area rather than what the fishers are catching.
Cool.
Which is what it is currently. But the one on the homepage, that collects a bunch of different hashtags and sort of relevant social media handles to just show a little bit about what's going on in the area. And I think it's such a rich opportunity to add that a bit of connectivity.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about getting the fishers to tweet their boat numbers as hashtags and boat names, so that we can start to introduce like a real trail of custody.
That's
so
great.
if you were in a restaurant, they could say on the menu, fish caught on hashtag B225 or whatever. I'm not very good with boat numbers or GA. Anyway, but on the boat number, and you click that hashtag, and then all of their tweets. So you might actually, they could have photographed your fish landing.
Oh, that's so cool.
What a nice connection.
I love that.
That could be, and I think that's what the new generation of shopper, that's kind of really what they want. They're okay, like maybe my generation, being a little bit older, might be more focused on going into a shop and seeing it. And whereas I think a couple of generations on, we're okay buying online. They're okay actually having that degree of separation, but there has to be a trail of custody. Like, they want to know where they're, and actually, I actually shop like this as well. Not obviously trying to capture my youth back. But I think we want to see where this fish is from. We want to understand how it's been caught. We want to understand how it's been kept and distributed. And I think that's. But then, if we encourage that trail of custody, it doesn't really matter how it gets to the door anymore. I think if there are companies out there. Chapman's is one where you can buy fish. Mail order, they're one of many, with varying different degrees of expense, and it's just a great way. It's a great way to catch fish. And I know particularly with Chapman's, and I mention them because we know a bit more about their business, having worked with them. But they encourage fishers to sell, local fishers to sell to them, and they do that with really good prices, and they offer a really sustainable service. So, and they do buy fish off of loads of local fishers, and so someone like that could genuinely give a trail of custody to the buyer, and I love that idea. And I know, and certainly we know now from looking at our market research, that if there were two options and one was from a local boat, I know I would buy it for sure. But 80% of people in Kent, Essex are saying they would buy it as a preference. So for me, that's a fantastic opportunity to just use the community to reach out and to try and change some of those attitudes, and show actually show physically that it's just come down the road. If you see a picture of the boat, right, and you see the fish being hauled over the sides, and you see it's being fished, it's not a trawler, for instance. I know there's some, trawling isn't necessarily seen as the best way to catch fish. Maybe that, or you might see that actually your sea bass is line caught, and it's a totally different. It just gives you a totally different perspective on the industry that is out there. It's like, this is happening. It's not like we're setting up glossy photo shoots, and pulling this sort of big market, pulling off this sort of big marketing thing. And actually, if you do that, it runs out very quickly and it becomes stale. If you allow people to put their own creativity into it, and that was the concept behind the social wall, of course, then it doesn't go stale, because it's their day-to-day interest in what you're doing. So I think it's a massive part of, and it's something we're always looking at, of how can we, and it's not just about social media, because you can get very lost in it being just a marketing tool. It's about getting people's interactions from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, to wrap up, can you tell us what's in store for the future of Fish Local? Will we be expecting more local species to be promoted, perhaps?
In terms of another species, I don't know yet. I think we'll hopefully, we'll show that there's been some success with this project when we do get to the end of it, and that there'll be an opportunity to create another project. I think the next steps for the herring is we've got some exciting options to look at, with working hopefully on a research project to show to create our local speciality, which would be brilliant. And then we have to set to launching that. So there's another big section. There's a whole other world of herring out there for Ollie and I, and Thames Estuary Partnership.
Yeah, open many doors, hopefully.
That's great.
Yeah, but I think, that the goal is to keep trying to connect that community with the fishing industry, start sort of promoting some growth, and if we can show that we've made some growth with this one, then hopefully we'll get a chance to put some new ideas together to how we can sort of keep supporting the industry and sort of coastal communities that it affects, and show that there is a brilliant connectivity across the Thames and just how great things are and can be around the Thames Estuary.
Ace, I love that. And Ollie, will we be expecting you to be a fisherman like your dad soon enough?
Do you know what? I've actually been speaking to him and saying, can we find the license for your old fishing boat? Because buying a license is quite expensive, but you can renew. Well, hopefully you can renew an old one for cheaper. And if this all kicks off, who knows? I might become a herring fisherman.
Yeah. That'd be great. Yeah, you need to keep the flame going because you're younger than everyone, right? So you can drag all your friends to do it with you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've already earmarked the ones that I would pick.
Yeah,
there's about one.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
There's about one that I think would be willing to get up at the hours.
Oh yeah, it's so early, isn't it? Oh goodness me. Well, thank you so much for today to both of you. It's been really exciting and humbling to hear all about this and shed light to it. And it feels like what you're doing is trying to make it feel fresh. And I can get that. And I feel like our listeners will also appreciate the languages that you use to convey that. I think you did a really good job. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to try some tasty silver shore herring.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if any of the listeners can guess how many fish puns Jesse said, you can win a free tasting.
Yeah.
I love a pun. Amazing. Thank you for that. Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Brilliant. Cheers, Chloe.
Cheers. Thanks. Bye.
You have now reached the end of today's episode. And how about that then, the silver shore herring? It's got quite a good ring to it. Is anyone else going to go and try those pickled herrings at the Union in Soho? They sound really good. And I didn't realise that kippers were herring either. I didn't want to admit it then, but yeah, I did not know that. And if you head over to our Twitter, I've actually made a poll so you can let me know if you knew if they were herring or not. And a thank you, as always, for listening to our podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to our show where we release episodes monthly. This podcast has been brought to you by me, Chloe Russell, on behalf of the Thames Estuary Partnership, and I look forward to welcoming you next time. Have a great rest of your bank holiday.